afternoon. Luke chapter 6. I have just skipped a few verses in the end of chapter 5 because we'll catch up with them sometime later in the topic of fasting. But I will go into chapter 6 today. 1 to 11. On Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples began to pick some heads of grain, rub them in their hands, and eat the kernels. Some of the Pharisees asked, "Why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath?" Jesus answered them, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, he ate what is lawful only for priests to eat, and he also gave to his companions. Then Jesus said to them, 'The Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath.' On another Sabbath, he went into the synagogue and was teaching, and a man was there whose right hand was shriveled. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal on Sabbath. But Jesus knew what they were thinking and said to the man with the shriveled hand, 'Get up and stand in front of everyone.' So he got up and stood there. Then Jesus said to them, 'I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it?' He looked around at them all, and then said to the man, 'Stretch out your hand.' He did so, and his hand was completely restored. But they were furious and began to discuss with one another what they might do to Jesus." Lord, we pray that you will speak to us through this passage of your word, that we will come to the place where you want us to come, and that we will confess the things that you want us to confess and believe the things you want us to believe. Speak through me, Lord, and I submit myself into your hand. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. The Lord of the Sabbath is the claim Jesus makes today. And as I want to take our attention to this statement Jesus made, for a brief moment I want you to reflect upon the laws that are given to man. There are laws, there are natural laws, and they are unbreakable. And there are spiritual laws, they are also unbreakable. But then there are man-made laws. Those can be broken. And that's when the statement comes that laws are made to be broken. So there is a natural order, there are laws in the nature that you cannot live if you violate them. And equally important and eternal are the spiritual laws, that if you violate those spiritual laws, you will have to face the consequences. But in the same category, but not with the similar standing, are the man-made law. And sometimes it is the man-made laws that is the main problem. And the Bible is never against the natural laws. Neither is it against the spiritual laws. It is in conflict with the man-made laws. Because it is oftentimes man attempts to write new laws against the nature and against the spiritual laws of God. So Sabbath implies law. And especially if you go through the Talmud, or you go through some Jewish writing, the most amount of discussion is on the topic of Sabbath. In Talmud, there are 24 chapters dedicated to the laws of the Sabbath and what to do and what not to do. How many steps you can walk from your house. And if you have to go further, for example, if you're going to go to the city hall, the 999 steps you can take, but no further. If you have to go further than 999, what you have to do is, before the Sabbath begins, you have to go and put some food at that place. So after you come to the 999, you eat some food, and that means that's your house. And you begin another 999. A tailor could not carry his needle on the Sabbath day. A scribe couldn't carry his books on the Sabbath day. You can't grind anything on your fingers. There is nothing to be carried, nothing to be moved. And so much so, sometimes, if you're trying to grab something from some other place with your one hand, and suddenly Sabbath begins, you can't even stretch back your hand along with the thing that you wanted. It would be meant that you were carrying something. So you have to drop those things there and then pull your hand. You can't pull it back. These were the laws made during the intertestamental period. The Jews began to write all these. So Sabbath is the most discussed and written and the most demanding of all the Ten Commandments in the New Old Testament. So that's when we see Jesus Christ directly, head-on, confronting this law. But in reality, Sabbath was not a bad thing. God, in His original plan, as a natural law, He has set Sabbath as a natural law. Because some of you know, in the history, several nations tried to change the 7 days week. Some of them tried to make it 8 days, some even tried to make 9 days. And they found out it was unbearable. The population was dying and the industry was collapsing. And they had to go back to the 7 days. And we all know that if we don't take rest in life, we die soon. So there is a natural aspect of the Sabbath. But at the same time, spiritually speaking, Sabbath not only gives us natural physical rest, it also restores our body and gives us spiritual rest. In Genesis chapter 2, and then in Exodus chapter 20 and 31, and later in Deuteronomy, Moses expounds the laws of Sabbath, but he nowhere gives any kind of detail that you should carry this and don't carry that. No, he says, don't work on Sabbath. Don't work until you die. Not just you, let the land also take rest after the 6 years of toil. Let your animals take rest. And if they were machines, they would say, your car should rest, your computer should rest, or whatever you use your machine, they also need rest. God instituted this because He knew what we are made of and what we are capable of, and that's the nature that it was supposed to be: rest and then restoration. And when we come back to restoration area, we begin to develop relationship with God. Relationships are what matters in life. And most of the weekend, you know how important it is to spend time with your family. If you work and work and work and never saw the face of your children, especially in Korea, the parents come home about 12 o'clock and they go early in the morning at 7 o'clock, hardly they see the face of their children. And if there is no Saturday and Sunday, what a tragedy it would be. And sometimes tragedy is already there because they don't keep the Sabbath. They keep working on Sundays and Saturdays. And especially Korean culture is that if your work begins at 9 o'clock, you have to be there at 8 o'clock. And if you finish your work at 6 o'clock, you have to leave after 7 or something. I don't know why. Work is so important. Family is not important. Wife and children are not important. God instituted Sabbath so that we will mend our bodies, mend our spirit, and mend our relationship with God and relationship with fellow human beings and family and children. So Sabbath was given to man so that they would restore their body, mind and spirit, restore relationship and take rest, and so that the natural order also can take rest from the attacks of the man. But Jews, as they went on into the religious spirit, changed this rest into burden and bondage. For Jews, by the time of Jesus Christ, Sabbath was not a joyful day any longer. It was the meanest day of all, like Blue Monday, right, Ron? You just mentioned something. Why is there a Blue Monday? They made Sabbath worse than your Monday today. It was like do's and don'ts, do's. There was no relationship mentioned, there was no God mentioned, there was no righteousness. It was like man-made legality that demonstrated who is more righteous than the other. There was no relationship with God. It is man's self-righteous attempts to recognize, to be recognized in the eyes of man and the eyes of God by their own efforts. Self-righteousness. And if anybody found violating, then they will have to pay for that violation. So Jesus or God instituted Sabbath for the rest and restoration and relationship. Jews turn it into bondage and burden. And when Jesus said in Matthew chapter 11, 28 following, he said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened." He's not talking about physically tired human beings in that place. He's talking about spiritually tired beings, tired of keeping the laws, tired of fulfilling traditions, tired of fulfilling human expectations, tired of measuring up to someone else's expectation. And he says, "Come to me and I will give you the Sabbath. I'll give you the rest. Because my yoke is lighter and my burden also, my yoke is easy and my burden is lighter." You don't have to fulfill these things out of obligation. It is not because you must do it. When you come to me, you will do them because you would like to do it. Because my burden is light and my yoke is easy. For I am humble, kind, compassionate, and gentle. Come and learn from me. He speaks to these Pharisees after denouncing them. He said, "Come to me, I will give you the rest." But these Jews had turned Sabbath into a bondage, a worst day of the week instead of a joyful day. Therefore, Jesus deliberately, more than any other laws, he violates the Sabbath principles of the Jews of his time. For example, in Mark chapter 2, Mark chapter 4, Luke chapter 4, John chapter 5, John chapter 9, Luke chapter 13, and you go on. In every of those incidents, he does it on the Sabbath day. He deliberately irritates the Jews, so to say, and he wants to get their attention, actually. And he attacks the man-made laws, the man-made bondages and burdens that they laid on peoples, especially the self-righteous Pharisees of his time. For example, look at it in chapter 4, he was casting out demons in Luke. In John chapter 5, he healed a man with 38 years of sickness. In John chapter 9, he heals a man who was born blind. And in Luke chapter 13, he heals a woman who was bent double, nearly bent down for 18 long years. And Jesus tells she was bound with Satan. And instead of rejoicing for the good in those miracles, they begin to accuse Jesus of a blasphemy. And in those days, once someone is found of blaspheming, he was sentenced to death by stoning. So they were looking for an excuse. In this passage too, they brought a man. First they saw his disciple do, another Luke puts another incident together, and they brought a man deliberately to test Jesus what he would do, whether he will continue to violate the Sabbath principles or he will follow their traditions. And Jesus goes against their traditions and heals the man, and then he claims that Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. When he said that, Jesus reinstituted the laws of Sabbath. When Jesus said the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath, you can imagine they are willing to stone Jesus for healing the sick on the Sabbath day. Now he says, Son of Man. That is a messianic phrase or word, that when Jew hears this title from Daniel, from Ezekiel, from all Old Testament prophecy, when someone claims to be the Son of Man, he is claiming to be the Messiah. And then he says, haven't you heard? He gives the example of David. Of course, these people knew everything in the Old Testament. They read very well. It was to say that, don't you know, it cuts across their heart. And it says, Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. Now, when you say the Lord of something, you claim divinity. And Jesus is not only claiming his messiahship, but he is claiming to be God. He said, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. God is the one who instituted Sabbath. And Moses wrote the laws from the commandments given by God. And now Jesus comes and I am the Lord of this Sabbath. I am the one who instituted this Sabbath. And by claiming that, he is reinstituting Sabbath. And the first thing he says, I am the Lord, which means dominion, submission, obedience, laws, territory, kingdom, principles. So many things come into imaginations. Whenever someone claims lordship, especially people from England and some other kingdoms can understand what does it mean to be called a lord. You claim certain titles, and that means you demand submission, you demand obedience, and you demonstrate some sort of dominion or certain territory or people. So Jesus is claiming his lordship and therefore demonstrating, as a Christians, we too fall into the same covenant of Sabbath. Sometimes Christians, they think that Jesus has nullified the Sabbath. No, he hasn't. He did not do away with Sabbath. He simply reinstated what Sabbath was for. And he said, I am the Lord of the Sabbath. And therefore, in obedience to what I have said, in submission to what I have said, and in obedience to what I have said, you will find rest in your soul. You know, the Lord of the Ring and all, you all are attracted to it, but when Jesus said, I am the Lord, and suddenly there is a resistance. Why is it that he claims his lordship over my life? Why can't he leave me alone? Why can't I do what I want to do by myself? Why do I need to submit to his laws? Why do I need to bow and submit myself to him? But my friend, the laws of nature and the spiritual laws are not violent. You can't violate them. And you cannot live once you violate those laws. It looks like as if you violate certain laws and you will have good time. No. For example, if God said, don't commit adultery, be faithful to your spouse, it looks like some sort of a bondage. There is a hedge. So you are restricted into certain territory that you have no freedom or no access to other places. And as a human being, there is this tendency to break away from that boundary. That be faithful in your marital vows. It appears as if this is a bondage. It appears as if they can cross over that line and go into adultery, then they will have more happiness or more freedom in their life or more satisfaction. But the truth of the matter is, once you violate that principle of faithfulness in marriage, you end up becoming more emptier and more lonelier and more miserable. It is in fulfilling the commandments of God that we truly come to the fulfillment and satisfaction in life, not in violation. So when Jesus commands his lordship over our life, it is in submission to his will that we will truly be happy, not in rebellion or disobedience. But there is this false idea, false assumption that if somehow you get rid of Jesus Christ, you will be happy. No, they are the most miserable of all. If you live life outside of Christ, there is no guarantee you will come to the place of fulfillment and satisfaction. Therefore, Jesus knows, God knows, and for our goodness, he has given us these laws. For our satisfaction, for our fulfillment, for our happiness, he has given us these laws. Not to take away our happiness. Jesus commands his lordship over Sabbath. So on Sunday is not the Sabbath according to the Jewish calendar, and even the Old Testament. Sabbath is always the last day of the week, not the first day of the week. But Christians have messed up. in Nepal we have Sabbath. We worship on Saturday. All of us are called Seventh-day Adventists in Nepal. Not because we chose, but because government has holiday on Saturday, not on Sunday. Sunday is a working day. So churches meet on Saturday. Hindus are keeping the Sabbath. Buddhists in Nepal are keeping the Sabbath, but Christians don't keep. But anyway, I'm just pulling your legs there. Jesus is the Lord over your weekend. That's what I wanted to take your attention. But oftentimes we go places and we do things that are so far from Christ, thinking that they will satisfy us, but at the end of the day, they make us more miserable, so lonely and so far away from reality. So Jesus is Lord. And secondly, Sabbath is for man. Jesus exclusively has made it clear that you Jews, you Pharisees, you legalists, you have made man for the Sabbath. You have made man an object, or some kind of a thing, that you use it for keeping the Sabbath. No, Sabbath was made for man, so that man would take rest, man would be restored, man would have relations with family, friends, and God himself. But you changed it into such a way that you made man meaningless and trying to make Sabbath so important. So Sabbath is for man. But Jews, they took away God from Sabbath and they became God by themselves, by laying all kind of rules and regulations. I just read an article a few days ago in one of our national daily in Kathmandu, the online edition. There was an article about Stephen Colbert, whatever you call him. I think he won't mind anything you call him. This guy, as you know, as humorous as some of you may find him funny, but some of them find him very. They are very angry at him. Actually, they're mad at him. So the Nepali newspaper was mad at him. Why? Because there is a tradition in Nepal where before the girl becomes 12, they are put in a temple as living goddess. Maybe you have heard the word Kumari. So the Kumari tradition in Nepal worships a pre-puberty girl as living goddess. They are taken away from family, chosen by special criteria, put in a temple. They cannot come out of that temple until they reach to the age of puberty, and once they reach to that age, they lose their divine status. So one of the girl who was goddess, about 10 or some years old, happened to visit America. And the Colbert was telling, now I can understand why North Korea insults America. I can understand why Iran insults America. But I cannot understand a country like Nepal would insult our country. The problem was, as soon as he landed in America, the temple authorities in Nepal stripped her off of the divinity because she landed in a heathen land. So she was defiled because she landed in America. And Colbert was so mad and making all kinds of stupid jokes about Kumaris. And his question was, now this is a living goddess. Now who are these temple guys telling the divinity that you are no longer a god or goddess? This is exactly the Jews had done in the temple. They had taken away God, replaced with all kind of human man-made traditions. And as Colbert was asking to these temple officials, who are you to strip the divinity of this goddess because she landed in our nation? How unholy is America for you? And he goes on to say how dirty the Kathmandu city was and all, and the Nepalese were so offended by that. Anyway, Jews had done with the things of God as the temple officials were trying to do with this little girl. They make her goddess and they made her a mortal. And in fact, when she returned back and she agreed to do certain things, and she is now reinstated back into divinity. Man was not made for Sabbath, but Sabbath was made for man. Sometimes, sadly, even today, churches are abusing Christians. Religion has taken so much that many, especially pre-Reformation church was found of taking life out of the Christians. The indulgences, you had to buy your certificate to go to heaven. You had to pay a lot of money, especially they wanted to build a huge St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. So they went all over Europe or wherever the church was to extract whatever the penny or money they could get out of people by all kind of religious traditions. And today sometimes these mega churches and mega TV ministries, they don't care whether a Christian is living a happy life or a sad life. All they care is for their big, huge mega buildings and projects. And these television evangelists will constantly bombard, if you give me $20, $50, $30, and God is going to bless you. They are abusing the believers, just like the Jews of Jesus' day were abusing, making the church important and the members meaningless. Members not important. A believer is no longer important. A building is important in many places. Jesus would not approve such kind of churches today. So man is made for the glory of God, and Sabbath is made for man to take rest, for man to restore his body, mind and spirit, for man to restore relationship with God. And then Jesus said, Sabbath meant to do good. He asked them a question, is it good to do good or evil, to kill or to save life? What is good on the Sabbath day? What do you prefer me? Jews were so cruel. Can you imagine? They hated Jesus healing on the Sabbath day. But if they had some compassion, if they had some kindness, if they were people filled with love of God, they would be delighted to see an invalid for 38 years to walk on Sabbath. They would be delighted to see an old lady bent for 18 long years to walk on Sabbath. They would be delighted to see these acts of mercy, but they were so furiated. They were filled with indignation. They wanted to kill Jesus along with them. Especially in John chapter 9, the blind man, they tortured this man for being healed on the Sabbath. And he was so tired, and he said, why do you bother me? I don't care who Jesus is. All I care, I was blind, but now I see. And this man is surely not a sinner as you are demanding me to say. He must be a righteous man. Jesus heals on the Sabbath to confront their compassionless hearts, their self-righteousness, their self-interest is destroyed by the act of goodness and mercy. And Jesus demands them an answer and say, is it good to kill or to save on Sabbath? And even for us today, Sabbath means that we should do good. Jesus is the Lord of everything we do. We have to submit to Him. He is God, and whatever He institutes is for our goodness. We submit to Him. We obey His laws. And then He has made Sabbath for us. Let us take rest on Sabbath. Let us restore relations with one another. Let us worship God on Sabbath. As much as you can, it is my sincere request. I have seen over 20 plus years of my ministry, any Christian who has faithfully followed God, who has faithfully kept the Sabbath, who has faithfully worshipped God on Sunday, they have maintained their sanity, so to say, their job, their family, whatever they have maintained. But there are Christians, they were Christians who were so faithful in the beginning stages. They had no job, no businesses. We prayed for them. God provided them job. God provided them businesses. And the business became so busy, they couldn't come to church anymore. And after some time, the life was no longer as meaningful as it was before. So any person who has faithfully followed God week after week, there is a divine blessing promised to those who keep the Sabbath. So my sincere request to you, if it is possible and is within your power, please Do not miss the fellowship on Sunday. It's not for the church. It's for us. It's for you. If you miss Sunday, I don't know how you reinstitute yourself, but for us, we feel so empty. And therefore, Sabbath is for man, for our spiritual well-being, for our physical well-being. And Sunday should not be a tradition. It should not be a tradition. It should be a relationship, a desire to restore our relationship with friends and family, and most of all, with God. And then do good on Sabbath, during the weekend, on Sunday, acts of mercy, act of kindness. And as we see from one of the movies, I think some comedian, random act of kindness. How do we change the world? By random act of kindness. You can pray, you can ask God, Lord, this weekend or this Sunday, what can I do? How can I bring some happiness in someone's life? You will be surprised how God will bring people in your ways, and you will continue to develop as a human being and as a spiritual being as well. So let us close our eyes here at this moment and consider the Lord of the Sabbath. Who is the Lord over your life? Who is the Lord over your Sundays and Saturdays? Who is the Lord over your other days? It doesn't mean that Jesus is only Lord on Sunday and Saturday. Who is ruling your life? Are you the master of your own life, or have you surrendered your life to Christ? It is in surrendering, it is in obedience, it is in submission to God that we find our true fulfillment in life. It is in keeping the laws of the Spirit, it is in keeping the laws of God that we save ourselves from all kind of troubles, not in violation. When you violate the laws of God, you are open to all kind of troubles in this world. Your heart is left unprotected. Your mind is left unprotected. So let us keep the laws of God. The Sabbath implies the Lordship of God. Submit to Him, obey Him. Then make Sabbath a meaningful day by restoring your body, restoring your spirit, restoring your relationship. And then do good on the Sabbath. Do something beautiful. Do something that God is delighted. And as far as it is possible, and it depends on you, is it within your power, never miss your Christian fellowship. Don't go hungry for the Christian fellowship, my friend. For it is in this fellowship and in keeping with the commandments of God we find our life and our fulfillment. Let us all stand up together at this moment as Brother Son will lead us into some music. If we have taken Jesus Christ very lightly,